Are you looking for new, creative ways to help you get your head straight? It's not your fault when you're struggling to relax or confidence is holding you back. You just haven't learned the best tools to deal with your situation. Open Forwards helps you break the vicious cycles that are making you unhappy. Head on over to www.openforwards.com and check out our online courses, expert guides, free articles, and specialist psychotherapy to help you work, love, play, and feel better. That's www.openforwards.com. Hi and welcome to episode number 21 of Self-Help SatNav, the podcast show where we discuss well-being, relationships, work, mental health, parenting and much, much more. It's December, so we're quickly approaching Christmas. Now I know not everyone likes Christmas, but I do. It's a time for slowing down, taking a break and giving myself permission to step away from the goals and ambitions that I'm working towards the rest of the year round. One thing I especially like at Christmas is a bit of comedy. And one of my favourite comedy shows of all time is Curb Your Enthusiasm. Now Larry David, the main guy, the protagonist, he bumbles his way through life, upsetting people, often getting scolded. He's a likeable, unlikable person who doesn't like much other people's company. And from episode to episode, his wife stands back, amazed at his latest foible. She stands there, looks at him and asks, "Why would you do that, Larry?" So as well as being hilarious, I think this is an interesting question. It's a question that shines a torch on his actions and asks him something about it. Why do that? And this area of psychology is called something. It's called behavioural analysis. And behavioural analysis explores what people do by asking this very question, why? And this why is made up of two things. It's made up of what comes before an action and what comes after it. What comes before it is called the antecedent. And this is what a person is thinking or feeling. It's their experience, their mood in that moment. And it's shaped by the environment, where they are, who they're with, what's happening in that space. And it's also influenced by your personal history of thoughts, assumptions, rules, and beliefs. And of course, these have a big influence on what you do and how you handle situations. That might be what Larry's wife is asking him when she puts that question to him. And why you do something is also made up of something else. It's influenced by what comes after it, the consequences. I'm more likely to say hello to someone on the bus I've said hello to before if the last time I did it, they said hello back. But if they ignored me, shunned me, shouted abuses at me, I'm much less likely to. In this episode, I'm speaking with a research scientist and clinical trainer of behavioural analysis. In particular, he has an ambition to teach helping professionals around the world to use clinical RFT, or clinical relational frame theory, so that he can help these professionals in their work with their clients. Now, relational frame theory is the study of the behaviour of human language and analysing its impact on behaviour. And clinical RFT aims to teach us to become much more sensitive and flexible to moment-by-moment experiences so that we can alleviate both our own and the suffering of other people. I'm delighted to have him on the show today. Speaking from Seattle on the west coast of the US, I'd like to welcome Matt Villatte. Thanks for joining me today, Matt.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for inviting me.
So let's get straight into this. The first question I want to ask you is, what's an example of self-help that you've put to use in your own life?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to reflect on that. I really like the work I do, the approach that I use in my work. because we don't make a big separation between clients and therapists, trainers and therapists. And it's something that I've learned from the approach from acceptance and commitment therapy, in particular from third wave therapies. This idea that we can use the tools that we use with your clients on ourselves. So really, thank you for asking me this question. I would say recently, perhaps over the past year, the tool that I've used the most in my personal life and actually also in my work is to pay attention to my intentions more. So the purpose of my actions. It might seem like very, very simple, but I've noticed that often when we reflect on the intention of our actions, we can be surprised that we are not that aware of the purpose, what we are trying to achieve with our actions. And when we become more aware of our intentions, often something different happens. We can reorient our actions. We can pay more attention to what is working and not working. For example, if I'm in a conflict with a friend or with my partner, there's an argument. If I can take the time to pause and ask myself, why am I raising my voice right now? What's my intention here? What's my goal? What am I hoping for? It's different ways of formulating the same question in the end. What is the consequence that I would like to see happen? Often it helps me either change what I'm doing right now because I realize it's not that helpful, or I might still do what I'm doing, but there is a mindset that is completely different, because now instead of acting in automatic pilot, I'm raising my voice because I'm angry, because I'm upset. It becomes I'm raising my voice because I want to be heard. So now I can pay attention more to the consequence. Is it working? Am I actually more heard when I raise my voice? Perhaps not. Do you see what I mean? It makes a really big difference.
It's quite different, isn't it, to maybe that natural way of thinking and doing that we tend to do. Like, I think we tend to just kind of react impulsively, automatically. And you're saying something different here, I think.
Yes. I really like what you said here, the reacting. I think, in clinical work or in coaching work, I often observe that clients, people who have difficulties in their lives, often describe their problems in ways that reflect what we would call excessive antecedent control, meaning they react, as you said, to things that they are feeling, that they are experiencing, but they don't pay attention enough to what they are trying to get as a consequence. So a big part of the work that we try to do in the approach that I use is to increase the influence from consequences, helping clients be a little more under consequential control and a little less only under antecedent control. So like I said, I'm not just raising my voice because I'm angry. I'm raising my voice because I want to be heard. It's a very different mindset.
So let me, if I just clarify that, so I understand that correctly, is excessive control or antecedent excessive control would be, I'm raising my voice because I feel angry.
Yeah.
And that's different from I'm raising my voice because I want to be heard.
Yeah, well, I want to be heard could still think it's a feeling, a thought that I have, but now it's oriented towards something I want to see happen as a result. If I say just because I'm angry, it doesn't say anything about what I'm trying to achieve. Even if I said because I want to feel less angry, okay, at least it's oriented toward a consequence that I'm trying to get. But if I say just because I'm angry, or if I said I've always been like that, or well, in conflict that's what people do, right? It still doesn't tell anything. It doesn't say anything about what I'm trying to achieve. What is my intention? Sometimes we say you give a reason, but you don't really give an intention. You don't really describe an intention.
So presumably you doing this has helped you to have less arguments.
You know, I haven't tracked that well, so I cannot really say. But I would say this: every time I pause and pay attention to my intention, it makes a big difference. It helps me adjust my behavior in ways that I think are much more workable. And I think I would say, yeah, the arguments become more productive, more respectful. There is a sense of moving forward instead of just getting stuck, just responding to feelings, being less, like I said, in automatic pilot or in a sort of puppet a little bit, you know, yeah, like a sort of control. In this case, it feels more it's under volitional control. You know, I'm trying to do something here. I'm trying to achieve something. It's very empowering in a good sense of the term, not in the sense of controlling necessarily, but in some sense of having more freedom, more flexibility.
What other benefits do you think you've noticed this has had for you when you've done this, or you've been able to do it?
It's a very good question. If I try to be more specific in terms of the benefits, I would say to continue on this idea of gaining freedom and flexibility, I think it helps orient my actions toward things that I really care about. When I said I want to be heard, ideally I don't want to stop there, but also elaborate a little more about why it's important for me to be heard. So when I explore the consequences of my actions and my intention, what I'm trying to achieve, I try also to link it to what we call values in acceptance and commitment therapy, for example, a direction, a sense of what can bring life satisfaction in a meaningful way. So even beyond being heard, I might because I want to contribute to this conversation. I want to be accepted because I want to connect with you. And so the more I can clarify this consequence, the more I'm in line with what I care about. So to answer your question directly, the benefits is that I feel more in line with what I care about. I find more satisfaction. There's more sense of harmony between my actions and what I think is important in my life. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily successful, but at least I feel like I have more ability to connect with what I care about if I pay attention to my intentions more carefully.
I have the image of you being much clearer about your identity with this, that you get a stronger sense of yourself, and so it has benefits for you, it has benefits for your relationships, your work, and possibly every area of your life. Has that been the case?
Yes. I like that you refer to the sense of identity. I am an immigrant. I've been in the US for about 8 years. I was born in France, and I spent my first 30 years in France. So I've experienced what it's like to move to a new culture and to change, to question myself in terms of identities, values, what's right and wrong. And I think for a while, maybe several years actually, I think I did experience acting more in automatic pilot, as I was saying. I think it's in part because when you change, you come from a culture to another culture, there's often some worries about doing things that might be inappropriate, might not fit the new culture. And so you can end up paying attention a lot to what you're doing, just making sure that it's not punished by others, or you look at what others do and you do the same thing. Like even for very simple things like social rules about greeting. In France we kiss on the cheek to say hello. In the US we hug each other. It's a different way of doing it. So you look at what other people do and you try to copy that. And it's fine, of course, you learn social rules by looking at what other people do. You imitate. That helps you be accepted and fit in the group. The problem is you also lose contact with the purpose of these actions. By focusing so much and only on what you're supposed to do, you lose touch with what you are trying to do. What is the purpose of what you do? And I've experienced for a while being in a new culture, losing touch with what, like you were saying, what's my identity, what I care about, what makes me, my values. After I started to pay attention more to what was important to me beyond the difference of culture, it helped me track more what happens in my interactions with others. For example, like, I'm French. I will always be French, really. Even now, I have a U.S. citizenship, but I will always be French. So I will always interact with people with that kind of background. If I only look at what other people do, I might refrain from, I don't know, making some jokes, for example, or communicating with others in a way that's more typically French. Thinking it's wrong because other people don't do that. But if I pay attention to what happens, the consequence of what I do, if I pay attention to what my intention is, I can actually also allow myself to be a bit different. I can allow myself to have that kind of flexibility and freedom that help me, let me be who I want to be.
So I'm sitting here thinking about this, and I'm thinking we've got that you can follow rules of a culture to sort of guide you as to what to do. You've got inside yourself what you care about most, the purposes, the intentions, the identity you want to embody. And there's like a choice between the two, possibly. Would the wise thing be that you know when to choose one over the other?
Yeah, I think you're formulating it well. It's you, if you understand better what is important, even in the social rule, beyond the you're supposed to do this or that, you're supposed to greet by hugging, for example. If you can understand the purpose, if you can understand what's beyond just the action that is prescribed by the rule, but also the consequence, the intention, it gives you more ability to choose. And there are a lot of things, for example, that I do in the US that I disagree with, or I don't like. I wish it was different. And now, even when I go back to France for a visit, I also look at certain things in France in the same way. But at least I understand the purpose. I understand how it fits there. And so the more I understand the purpose, the less I find it arbitrary, the more I can also choose to adapt to a culture. So it's not so much that there is a conflict between different rules. Of course, if there are two actions that cannot be done the same way, like I was saying, the greeting, for example, you at some point you have to make a choice. But this choice is informed by the intention, by what you're trying to achieve.
I think what you're talking about here speaks a lot to what people who are listening have probably experienced. I guess there's something similar between the US and the UK in that there's been a lot of immigration into those places. Mm-hmm. So people are transcending one or two or more cultures, and I guess kind of trying to find a way to navigate those different rules and also not lose a sense of what they want as an individual as well.
Yeah. You use the term transcend, and I think it's a very important term. When I was saying I'm trying not to stop at the short-term goal that I have, but identify the value that's connected to it. It's about transcending the concrete rules or the concrete goals. And that's how we can also find connection and find flexibility. Like, again, my example of different ways of greeting, French would find that weird to hug. Americans find that weird to kiss on the cheek. But if you try to contextualize these actions a little more, then you realize that the intention is the same, in fact. There is something about connection, acknowledging each other, kindness, etc. So at that level, you can find similarity. You can connect with each other. And I think when you explore your intention, not just in terms of specific goals, but in terms of values, in terms of abstract concepts, then you find that in the end, people tend to care about pretty much the same things.
Yeah, that's the nice thing. That's the nice thing. So you published a book, didn't you, not so long
Yeah,
ago, a year plus ago, called Mastering the Clinical Conversation,
that's right.
Language as Intervention, which you wrote with your wife, Jennifer,
Mhm.
and Steve Hayes, I believe, as well.
Yes, that's right.
What was your ambition, your collective kind of ambition in you writing this book?
Well, the goal we had with this book was to help clinicians use language as a tool. I think naturally all therapists or coaches, trainers use language as their primary tool in their intervention. They talk with the clients, and that's what will help bring some change in the client's life. But what we were trying to do is use the relational frame theory, which is a theory of language and cognition, that can tell us quite a bit about how language works and how it can impact our behaviors. So the goal we had was to it's not a theoretical book. It's a book that's meant really to help clinicians, therapists, practitioners in general think about language as a tool that helps them use language and interactions in a more precise and intentional way.
Okay, yeah. And so, I mean, that sounds quite sort of new. That sounds quite cutting edge, if I can use that phrase. Do you think you're kind of pioneering something new in the area of psychology and psychotherapy here?
You know, I think, well, we're not the only ones who thought of language as a tool. You know, I'm thinking of motivational interviewing as, of course, talked about the importance of language to create change, for example. But probably what's new in our approach is to link this perspective on language to behavioral psychology. For a long time, we thought behavioral psychology doesn't have much to say about thinking, about talking. There is not a good theory of language. And we think that RFT, relational frame theory, has really something good to offer. This model RFT was the background of acceptance and commitment therapy for decades, and it still is. But I would say it started as the background of ACT, and progressively ACT has developed a bit on its own. The connection between RFT and ACT are, in my opinion, not the most obvious nowadays. So you're saying, is it cutting edge? I would say it is, in the sense that we took the basic principles of the theory and tried to bring them directly to the therapy room. Instead of teaching clinicians about the theory, just the background, right? Now we think of it more as a set of principles that you can use in your practice. So in that sense, it's fairly new, yes.
So you're clearly teaching people how to use this through the book. And I know you're on tour. You're coming to London in on the 8th and 9th of February 2018 on a 2-day workshop to teach this to clinicians as well.
Yes, that's right. I'm pretty excited to come back to London. I came about 5 years ago at the time when we were still writing the book. So it was very helpful actually to have the feedback from participants in the workshop. During the whole process of writing the book, we connected a lot of trainings and supervision, and I think the process of developing the book definitely was based on this feedback. We're able to refine our approach. So I'm pretty excited to come back and to show what we've came up with after these years of development.
Okay, I'll put details to find out more information about that event and how to book in the show notes at the bottom of this podcast. Okay, So we're talking a bit about your personal use of using intention to help you get clear about some of the choices and decisions you make. That's kind of seems like it's kind of going on in the professional work that you're referring to in your book and that you're doing within the workshop here. Have you noticed that they've kind of enhanced each other? Like as you've developed this work professionally, has that had a bearing on how you look after yourself personally?
Yes, I would say yes. I'm always surprised by how much we can still learn from, even from the same principles. Um, I I read new books, I read new articles, but I also reread old books, and I'm often surprised by how much is in old books. Um, I would not say we don't invent anything or we just keep reinventing the wheel. I don't think so. I think talking about the same thing in different ways can be also helpful. But I often go back to, for example, the first RFT book from 2001, and I'm surprised by how much there is in there that can also be helpful. It's a really scholar book, right? So it's not a book for general audience, even for clinicians. Most clinicians would probably not want to read this book. And yet I have to say, I go back to this book and often I have really big insights for my personal life. For example, one way it might be surprising in which learning about theory and philosophy behind RFT has helped me is to gain more distance from my own beliefs, especially in my work. When I started working on our book, I really had the sense that what we were doing was a sort of truth, like we are going to show what really happens at the level of behavioral principles, and we are going to link clinical practice in science. I was much more essentialist, I think, maybe even righteous, thinking this is the truth because it's the behavioral principle, so it's the truth. And working on this and learning more about the philosophical foundations of RFT, especially I'm thinking of the pragmatic truth criterion of functional contextualism. So I know it's a lot of complex terms, but basically it means we don't believe that there is an objective external truth outside of experience. We are interested in how our ideas impact our experiences. So theories are evaluated based on their utility. And at first it's hard to think this way. When scientists, the tradition is generally to think that we are trying to find the truth that's out there, right? Our experiments are meant to discover the truth. And I don't think that way anymore. I think more in terms of pragmatism, thinking, well, it's a way of thinking. Basic principles are a way of organizing our experiences. I talked earlier about antecedent, action, and consequences. In the past, I would have said, this is what happens, what's really happens. Now, I think it's just a way of organizing my experience that is useful. And to me, it's really an area that's where you can see the connection from the philosophy to the clinical application in your everyday life, or not even clinical, just your application in your everyday life. Thinking pragmatically, without assuming that there is an objective truth to be discovered.
Yeah, I can see the shift that you're talking about there. You started it with distancing yourself from your beliefs, which might seem a bit kind of strange to begin with. Why would we distance ourselves from our beliefs? Mm-hmm. But I just kind of noticed listening to you that what comes across is you seem happier with how you see it now than how you saw it before, as it being a truth before. Am I right there?
Yeah, I think, of course, the concept of happiness is always whatever we put in there. But I would say probably more peaceful, tranquil, probably less defensive. I could think that after finishing a book, I would want to defend what's inside. I'm excited about promoting what's inside, sharing what's inside. But I don't think so. Might not be in the best position to tell, but I don't feel like I have to defend everything that's in there. having been through the process of building this approach, I also realized that there are so many ways we could have gone with. There were different versions of certain chapters, for example, that now are completely changed, and they are not necessarily wrong. And so when you get in touch with the possibility of building different stories that are just as valuable, that helps you get some flexibility. It's really the same thing as when we work with clients and we try to get in touch with the different versions of ourselves, different thoughts that might contradict each other. There's not necessarily one that is in an absolute way better than the others, more true than the other. It depends on the contexts. When saying happier, I think it's the sort of confidence that in the end, all that is not, it's not that important in a way. It's not that important. The process of trying to build useful tools, of exploring thoughts and beliefs and see what could be useful here, to me is what matters most. But which belief is the most important in an absolute way, it's not something that I really care about.
It seems to bring us right back around to where you started, this pragmatism. What's useful is that when you started, you said, the thing that I found useful, particularly in the last year, is paying attention to my intention.
That's right. That's right.
You're just looking to see what you're doing as being practical or useful in terms of where you want to go.
That's right. Yeah. It contributes to thinking more pragmatically, and thinking pragmatically doesn't mean that we're not interested in our own histories, in our feelings. It just means that we keep in mind what is important in terms of values. That we don't just get stuck in our actions, following rules without any purpose. But I also spend time on reflecting on my histories, wondering why I feel the way I feel, or it's part of what I enjoy, of course. But if I disconnect completely from my intention, I think that's where I become less happy.
So we're talking about a what here. We're talking about doing a thing, which is to be intentional. People often say to me when I'm describing things similar to this, yeah, but how, Jim? How do I do that? And I wondered if you could give any tips, things that maybe you've noticed work for you that help you do that more easily.
Yeah, one of the ways in which I think we can help people gain the sense that they can, more basically increasing self-efficacy is to look at what we have been able to do with the same purpose. Maybe not in the exact same situation, but as I was saying earlier, if I identify my intentions in a broader way, for example, I want to be heard, or I want to contribute, I realize right now I'm raising my voice. Let's say I'm in a meeting and I hear people talk about something, I disagree with them, and I raise my voice. I interrupt people, and if I stop, I realize, well, it's because I want to contribute something important for me there. And if I'm, like you said, I was like, okay, but what else can I do? It's a big meeting. How could I be heard without raising my voice? If I reflect on other times when I've wanted to be heard and maybe it worked, if I can look at a variety of situations that I've lived and find some examples where I've been successful at meeting that goal, then maybe there is something I can transfer to this situation. And also look in the past at what I've done that has not worked. I think, of course, it's always possible that someone has never been successful at all in meeting a specific goal. And sometimes what's best to do is to teach these skills directly. If you never learn well, for example, to express your emotions, or to express formulate a request, for example. Some people never really learn that very well. So you may actually want to learn directly the skill. But I think in most cases, people have that in their repertoire, but they're not very aware of it. They don't realize that they can actually do it, that they've done it in the past and that it has worked. So I think part of the ways that you can empower someone is to first look at the intention and see if that intention has not been there before. And perhaps even if you haven't been successful at meeting your goal.
Great tip. I like it. Looking through your own experience. And I like that. It does seem really empowering. And you use that word there to just kind of search back through, look for examples, and I guess kind of look a bit more closely at what you might have done and kind of what worked. I really like that. Yeah. So Matt, we're coming up to the end of the year. What are your hopes, plans for 2018?
This end of year is always a time I think for most people to reflect on the past year and to project themselves on the coming year. Professionally speaking, I have a few trainings coming in UK is probably the first, I think, in 2018. But I keep doing some of those trainings outside the US. I'm very excited to keep sharing this work with people in the community, in particular in the third wave CBT community, but even beyond. And, for me, over the years, I've also learned to not have too much, of course I want goals, like I said, intentions, but also like to let also things unfold for themselves. It's also good not to be looking constantly for an outcome in your actions. When I said intention, I don't necessarily mean I want something out of this action. It's more like, how do I want to be? What are the values that I want to embody right now? Like if you ask me right now, why am I doing this interview right now? Of course, I could say, well, it's part of sharing, promoting the book, the training, these sort of things. But I can also put that a little bit aside and just think, okay, I'm talking with you, Jim. We're talking about this topic of intention. And I'm trying to do it in an open way because openness is something I care about. I try to be humble even with my own expertise because humility is something I care about. So you asked me what I'm thinking of as the year is coming. Well, if I can keep doing that, I think I'll be pretty happy. It's something that's I would like to keep improving probably in my life.
Wonderful. I really appreciate you joining me today, Matt. It's been a great conversation. Really enjoyed it. And hope to see you in London next year.
Yes, it would be a great pleasure. And thank you for inviting me, Jim.
There are some great resources with Matt around. Look at him on YouTube and check out the links to his websites in the show notes. Matt will be in the UK early next year on the 8th and 9th of February in London running a 2-day workshop for therapists, coaches, allied health professionals, educators, and anyone really in a helping profession who wants to learn more about how to use clinical RFT to help the people you work with. It will help to master the skills of conversation professionally. I'm not talking about being nice to people. I'm talking about understanding language at a much more precise level, observing what is said and done, taking conversations in a more purposeful and productive direction. I've seen one of Matt's workshops before in Spain earlier this year, and I can tell you they're something different. He demonstrates how to pay close attention to what's happening between you and another person, and shows you ways of using language to help people act less on impulse or automatic pilot, and instead find power in making choices about what you do. This workshop is on the 8th and 9th of Feb next year, organised by Joe Oliver at Contextual Consulting, and you can find a link to more information, including booking details, in the show notes. I'd like to wish you a very Merry Christmas, and I'll be back with you in the new year with a little announcement about Self-Help SatNav. You're going to start hearing a bit more from me as we ramp up the frequency of the shows and move towards becoming a guest-focused show. More on that in January. For now, be brave, be gentle, and keep moving forwards.